welcome back to Hawkeye's House of Horrors. And today I'm really excited to bring you the next film, the next horror film I have of 1980 that I really enjoy. And I must tell you right out of the chute here, this film is the one that, in rewatching these a couple times more, this is the one that's climbed up the list. It was further down the list, and then like I've always enjoyed this, but each time I watch it, it gets better. And that is The Gates of Hell. Now it also goes under the title City of the Living Dead, which personally I don't really like that title. It sounds like it's a George A. Romero movie, and that's not what you're getting here. So I think The Gates of Hell is a much more fitting title to the film. So that's what I'm going to refer to this movie as. And I believe it was released to in the US under that title as well. But it was directed by Lucio Fulci. And as I said, I've always enjoyed this film. And I got to Fulci late in life. I was like maybe in my early 30s when I got to his films. I'd heard about him, read about him. I certainly had got to another Italian filmmaker, Dario Argento, before I got to him. Um, and certainly for those people, once again, I hope you've seen this film. But for people that haven't, um, I would definitely say stop, watch the movie. But definitely, because Fulci made films through the 70s and the 80s and maybe the early part of the 90s, made horror films generally. He didn't start out that way, but he got into the giallos in the early part of the 70s and then worked his way into uh, horror, or he was known as the godfather of gore, which is a wonderful, perfect nickname for him, as some of his films were extremely graphic, including this film here. But for people that have not seen Fulci, there is always a good question. Well, where do I start? Do I start at the beginning and just work my way forward? I would say no. I would start where I started, and that is with his 1979 Zombie. And then just kind of keep going through them. There was this film, as well as The Beyond and House by the Cemetery. Those four films there. They're all graphic, they're all splatter gore, um, but they're all really good. And that's where I would start. And then maybe you could jump back into the early part of the 70s where he was doing the Giallos. Those are really good as well. But that's what I would say. Now, after his success of doing Zombie just the previous year, Fulci sat down with a screenwriter who was uncredited with Zombie. That was Dardano Sacchetti. And they started working out, hammering out this idea for a new film. Um, Now, Sacchetti had also written The Psychic. Um, I think it was also called The Seven Notes of Black or something like that. I know it as The Psychic with Jennifer O'Neill. That was like 1977. Also a really good one as well. Not quite so gory, but it just, like this film, it has wonderful atmosphere going on. But he had also written Cannibal Apocalypse, that also came out in 1980 as well. Another good film. But when they sat down and started hammering this out, they definitely took influences from H.P. Lovecraft to infuse into the story, which is rather cool. Now, this film was released on August the 11th, 1980, in Italy. I'm not sure exactly when it was or if it actually ever did come to the theaters in North America or if it just uh, came in with the VHS market at that point. Now, I'll go through the story a little bit here. And the story is about Mary Woodhouse, played by the gorgeous Catriona MacColl. She also was in a couple other Fulci movies I've already mentioned, The Beyond and House by the Cemetery. They were like all in succession. She was in all three of them. Personally, I'm going to get to that next year, the next year I come to. But personally, I think The Beyond is his best. Uh, but anyways, I will just continue on talking about the gates of hell here, though. But anyway, she's having a séance with a bunch of people, and caught under its spell, I guess, she actually witnesses the death or the suicide of Father Thomas. He hangs himself in a cemetery in Dunwich. Ah, there you go. There's a bit of a Lovecraft connection right there. Um, but right after that, she is thought to have died, and then is buried in the ground. Along comes Peter Bell, played by Christopher George. Um, at this point in his career, he was making a lot of horror films. I know he was in like Pieces was another one. I think that was 1982. But at this point, he was making a lot of horror films or Italian horror films. And then he's a reporter, as I think I mentioned. If not, he was a reporter. Um, but he is investigating her death. Now, as well, I must say, Christopher George, I remember him from John Wayne's El Dorado. That's like the first thing I remember him in. My dad is a gigantic John Wayne fan, but I remember him from that film. But in this film, he definitely comes off the best. He puts in the best performance. He adds a little something to the film. This is Christopher George. He's really good. But supposedly him and the director Lucio Fulci, I apologize, they didn't quite get along very well. Now, with Bell, when he comes along, he goes to the cemetery where Woodhouse is actually in a coffin in the ground. This is a wonderful scene. There's some really great tension going on here and some atmosphere. Um, and then, incredibly, Bell grabs a pickaxe and thunders it into the ground or into the coffin, I'm sorry, to open it. And it just like pierces right into the coffin, nearly hitting her in the face. It's quite a cool scene. But in the end, what they need to do is because the priest has hung himself, he has opened a gate to hell. And they then need to close this gate. Now, along the way, there is actually another story going along as well, involving characters named Sandra, played by Janet Argren, and Jerry, played by Carlo DeMejo. Um, they've got their plot or story going on as well until they all meet up and um, then together work on closing this gate to hell. Now, as I said, I love the atmosphere in this film. It's really good. And Fulci, for sure, in this film, should be more known more than just the Godfather of gore. He's actually working on uh, bringing terror in more than just some graphic image coming across the screen. He's got wonderful atmosphere. Absolutely love his use of actual fog in the film. There's a lot of that going on, as well as cobwebs. Near the end, when they're going into close the gates of hell, there's cobwebs everywhere. It's great his use in that. To go along with really a great pounding score done by Fabio Frizzi. He had worked on Zombie the previous year. I mean, Zombie, that theme, it totally kicks ass. This one, okay, maybe it's not quite that amazing, but it's great as it's simple, but it really drives home the terror along with what you're seeing on the screen. So it's doing a really good job in that department. Now, I've written some things down about the film that I didn't in my previous watch. These things really stuck out to me um, and are things that really make this film really good. Now, first off, Sergeant Clay. He's just in the beginning of the film. He's there when Mary Woodhouse is found. dead. He's played by Martin Sorrentino. I think he is frigging hilarious in that role. He's just in there like angry, pissed off, and like yelling at all these people. Yells in this one guy's face if the stash is in the toilet. It is hilarious. And then as well, along in the seance, there's a character named Teresa, played by Adelaide Aste. I love when directors do this. I know John Landis did this a lot, um, but when the character, his were more in comedy, but I love when the character breaks the fourth wall and looks directly at the screen. She does this a couple times in the film, um, and I love how she does that. And I'm not sure if Fulci did that in any of his other films, but I really like how her character is doing that, speaking directly to you, the audience. One thing that Fulci definitely does in this film, and I think he does it in other films. I remember Manhattan Baby, as well as, well, some horrible things happen to eyes in his film, like Zombie is a horrible scene there. But there's a lot of zoom ups and a lot of looks at eyes in this film. So that's kind of interesting, or like something that he did a lot of. Now I'm going to talk about the best kills in the film, and this is for the gorehounds. They need to see these kills. Um, in watching them, they just make me say, "Wow!" They're very gory and very graphic. Going in order of when they happen in the film, the first one involves a couple kissing and smooching in a car. They're played by Daniela Dora and Michelle Sovia. Now he was in quite a few horror films, including Demons and Absurd. He then went on to direct, and there were some really good ones as well, like Cemetery Man and The Church. Um, and I think he worked quite closely with Dario Argento as well. And he may have showed him the ropes a bit within directing films. But anyways, they're in this car, and she thinks she hears something outside. He's like, it's okay. Here, I'll just turn the lights on in the car, and he turns them on, and they see Father Thomas hanging from a noose in the street. Very terrifying for this couple. Um, he then, I think, he like disappears and then reappears beside the car, and then she looks at him, and you discover quite quickly that is not what you need to do. As she then starts to cry blood out of her eyes, and then proceeds to, well, vomit her stomach and intestines out of her mouth. A very graphic scene that makes you say, wow. And that is Lucio Fulci right there for you. Now, the other scene involves a character named Bob, played by Giovanni Lombardo Radis. He is killed by a person, just, well, I wouldn't say a normal person, but a person, Mr. Ross, played by Vernantino Vernantini. And he uses a drill to go through Bob's head. Uh, it's wonderfully long. It isn't just a quick kill. This is slow, and certainly the first time you're watching this, you would think, okay, how's Bob going to get out of this situation? How is Bob going to not get killed here by the drill? Well, he does. He gets horribly murdered by Bob. Now, Radis as well, he was in a couple other good horror films as well from 1980, that he made prior to this. That is Cannibal Apocalypse, which I've already spoke about, and The House on the Edge of the Park. Those were actually his first three films he was ever in, followed by Cannibal Ferox from 1981. So right off the hop, he's in some very good horror films to start his career. Um, a few other things I wrote down as well. There's an Undertaker in this film. It's rather funny because he looks like he's three quarters dead himself. Lucio Fulci actually makes a cameo here as the coroner. Um, and as well, I loved it in the film with Sandra and Jerry, where um, when it is finally revealed that there's actually a dead body in her kitchen, you're not shown this or really know what the problem is until Jerry sees it. So the whole time you're actually thinking she's actually having a bit of a meltdown, and he's here to help her with that. When in fact there's a dead body in the kitchen, and something's going on here. So I really loved how that scene played out. But yeah, that's it. The Gates of Hell, Lucio Fulci. Um, I highly recommend this one. It's really good, but yeah, you got to be able to stomach it, or you got to be able to take the gore in order to really enjoy it. Otherwise, no, I wouldn't say watch this one. There's some other Fulci films you might be able to get into that are less gory than this one here, but anyways, that's the Gates of Hell. And anyways, I can't wait to watch the next one, and I'll tell you the next four that I'm going to bring from 1980, they are great. These would be on a list I would have of maybe within the top 25 horror films of the 80s. These ones are going to be on that list for me for sure. But, anyways, Hawkeye out, and remember, stay scared.